Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining another episode of the PM Learning Series. I can't believe it's almost been a year. So this is episode number 36. So I've done almost 40 of this if you count some of the side series that I've been doing. So really excited to have a lot of you here today for this series of special live streaming events where I interview industry thought leaders and product practitioners to share about their career journeys and lessons learned along the way to inspire product builders like you to level up your product careers and also build better product. Today, we have a very exciting guest, but before we get there, just a couple housekeeping. Make sure you subscribe to the newsletter in the event details page. You'll get a link every Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific time. We'll send out key takeaways, recapping this event, and then also give you future event updates. So make sure you follow us. For those who are joining us, please drop in the chat. I see a lot of folks already saying hello. Please introduce where you're joining us from. And what question you have for Jorge. So without further ado, let me bring him up. We have a very special guest. Obviously, everyone loves Duolingo and loves learning about gamification. So we're really, really honored to have you here today, Jorge. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So Jorge is an advisor focused on product leadership, strategy, growth, and gamification. In edtech and fitness tech space. Until recently, he was the chief product officer in Duolingo, where he helped lead the company to over 60 million monthly active user and 415 million in ARR, annual recurring revenue, and a successful IPO. Prior to that, he's held various product management and product leadership roles at Zynga, MyFitnessPal, and Lucidchart. Jorge is originally from Argentina. I knew that some folks were from Argentina previously and commented on the chat, but he currently lives in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with his wife and 3 children. Big family, Jorge.
Thank you. Yes,
they're fun. I like to say hi to some of our product members from all over the world. Actually, we have folks joining from Nigeria, Egypt, a couple folks from Germany, a lot of folks from India, Armenia, NYC, Ukraine, London, Mexico. Wow, today we have an exceptionally international crowd from Oklahoma, Brazil, Berlin, Georgia, Iran. Thank you so much, folks, for joining. And please keep dropping in the chat questions you have, as well as, where you're joining us from. But before we dive in, I just want to share one quote from our member, Amrico. Duolingo is one of his, best example for engaging and fun learning experience. And he truly, enjoys, using the product and learning from the mastermind behind this product. And I think his sentiment really resonated with, additional LinkedIn member as well. So, all right, lots of pressure. Drum rolls. Why don't we start from can you tell us a little bit about your career journey? We know that you have a lot of experience in Zynga, MyFitnessPal, and Lucidchart until you joined Duolingo. What was some of the, key learnings up till this point, and how did you find your way into product and into this gamification space?
Yeah. Well, before all that, a quick correction. I wouldn't call myself the mastermind behind anything. Duolingo has tons of really smart people who work there, very much like a team effort. And obviously Luis, he's brilliant as a product leader. So I was happy to be part of that and contribute and do the best I could to help the company grow. And luckily it's grown to what it is today. In terms of kind of my journey, I have for years been kind of fascinated by how people make decisions, and particularly how they make irrational decisions, and whether there's a way you can help people make better decisions, accounting for the fact that they're often irrational. So I studied marketing in undergrad, very much with a focus on the consumer insights and how ads influence behavior. Did a bit of marketing work after that. Then in grad school, I got more into like the product side and studied decision science, and also kind of more like product development things from a design thinking standpoint. And part of that, I took a course on gamified learning. This is before Duolingo was even a thing, which I thought was like just a fascinating topic. And after that, I went to work at Zynga, it's a video game company, and really enjoyed the experience of thinking through all the incentives and the experiences and driving behavior in this little laboratory, which is a game. Eventually, I kind of felt bad about it because I felt like some people were getting addicted to a game and it didn't have any like true value. I felt for them. I felt more like extracting value from other people rather than providing them value. And so I left, went to work at MyFitnessPal, which is again like a behavior forming app with the idea of creating good habits for health. I did that for a little while. Then went to work at a company called Lucidchart, which is kind of like unrelated to all this stuff I have been doing before, but it was a good opportunity to have leadership experience and hire folks and kind of lead a team. So I learned a lot about that there. There's a kind of B2B SaaS company. And then Duolingo reached out. So flew out here to Pittsburgh, really liked the team, the product. My mom was using Duolingo at the time to learn English. And so I decided to move here to Pittsburgh, and that's the rest is history.
That's thanks for the overview. I can see how the dots connecting together because of what you study, all the decision science, the psychology, and then how you work for a gaming company and then into fitness. So much of fitness is also about gamification and that motivation aspect.
Yes.
So I like to maybe start. Looks like you have a pretty good trend of like looking at like working at various aspects of gamification. You also touching up how sort of the pros and cons of gamification of like creating value as well as extracting value. And we'll touch upon some of those. So I'd like to start with the basics. We have a LinkedIn member, Chance, asking a novice question, but I think it's a very fair question. What type of product do you think are most suitable for gamification? And what are some of the key principles to do gamification right? What is your sort of framework or mental model of thinking about this?
Yeah. So I think gamification is basically a means to driving some sort of behavior, and especially it's a way to use the irrational side of someone's mind to make them do some sort of behavior, and this is used all over the world, right? Like, and it's often used for bad things like gambling or some sort of addiction. What I find most interesting is how can you use the same tactics, but to help you do something that you choose consciously you want to do because it's good for yourself, right? Like, so learning or health or fitness or savings or whatever. So at a high level, if you're trying to drive a behavior change situation or outcome, then gamification could be a good fit for what you're trying to do. And it's even better fit when it isn't there's you're trying to fight like the synergy of becoming lazy, or like there's the virtues versus vices. Like virtues they're hard, so that's even more better room for gamification there too. In terms of frameworks that I find useful, I find myself often thinking on three different frameworks. One is this idea of a core loop, and a lot of games have this thing where you do a level, you beat a boss, you get more power, and you do the level, and the next level you beat a boss, etc. Right? So it goes from like easy to hard to reward to easy to hard to reward, and it might feel like the game is super different across the hours you play it, but you're actually going through the same three steps over and over and over and over again, and that's the core loop. And for Farmville 2, it was like you till the land, you plant something, then you go home. There's like a reminder that your reward is ready. You come back, and then you plant that thing, and you go through the cycle over and over. So if you can think of a way to create a core loop into your experience, it already starts making it feel gamified, right? It has some sort of like effort, reward, and like a call out of some sort to kind of make you come back. So that's one framework. Another framework is what's often referred to as like a core game and a meta game. And it's confusing because it also has the word core in it, but it's like a different framework. So core game and meta game. And think of it as like if you ever play Super Mario Bros, Super Mario Brothers, there's a map that you navigate. That's the meta game that you're trying to save Princess Peach from Bowser, and that's kind of the big story. And then you go inside each level, and that's kind of your core game. And you see this pattern in like tons of games. For example, again, like Candy Crush. Like you have the levels that you go in and you kind of do match 3 things, but then there's this path you have to progress, and you go through different worlds, etc. That's the meta game. And you can go super deep into the meta game and be very casual on the core game, or vice versa, or super deep in both, or casual in both, whatever. But you have this thing. For Duolingo, I would say like the core game is the lesson experience, and then we have created a bunch of meta games around it, like the path, the leaderboards, the streak, etc. Those would be meta games. And then the third framework I often think of is that there are different types of gamers, and that have different impulses, right? So one is you have mastery folks, people who are trying to just get better at something. And you think of like golf as like a classic mastery type of sport, where it's just kind of to get yourself beating the court in a way. You have people who want to compete versus others and kind of beat others. Boxing, right? Might be an example. You have things that are more collaborative. You have a goal you're trying to do together, like an escape room in a way. And then you have things where you just kind of socialize, and it's just the game is just an excuse to get to know people and feel connected and feel a sense of belonging, etc. And if you think of the most successful games ever, like soccer or football or basketball, they are able to tap into all those 4 at the same time, right? There's a sense of you're getting better at how you kick the ball and your skills and dribbling, etc. You feel like you get to beat another team, you get to collaborate with your team, and you get to be friends with your team outside of the match, right? So as you build a product that's gamified, it's helpful to think how you're bringing those elements in, how you mix and matching them in a way that's effective. So those 3 things, kind of core loop, core game versus meta game, and profiles of players are things I reference a lot.
Okay. Jorge, are you up for a challenge? Because there's so many different levers. 3 framework, but within each, there are a lot of different levers that you can play. Yeah. So the chat has blown up. Let's do a scenario play if you're up for it. So we have a LinkedIn member who works for, let's say, B2B SaaS company. Traditionally might be considered not so, sexy and fun. Like, how can gamification be applied to make B2B SaaS interesting?
Yeah. Well, I haven't had the chance to apply gamification to B2B SaaS, but there's a ton of ways you can do it. You always got to start with what's the behavior you're trying to drive. So let's say your B2B SaaS company is trying to I don't know, if the audience want to give me like a more specific use case, I'm happy to go over that. I can come up with one. Where does Bella work? Who can use his company? Anyone? Okay, I don't see. I can come up with one if that's easier.
Yeah, you can get started. I let me keep monitor. I think there's also questions around like the finding the right balance between rewards, because you mentioned about the different type of persona, the different type of habits people wanted to influence. What is the right amount of prompts or stimulus, without feeling like it's too much or too little?
Yeah, that's a good question. But let me go back to Bella's question.
We'll come back to the B2B one.
Oh, okay. Are you gonna find like a use case that I can?
Yeah, I'll see if people start dropping in use cases.
Or I can come up with one. It's just, would that be easier?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's say you have I don't know, HubSpot. You're trying to get people to send emails, right? Or like email campaigns, and you could look at open rates. And you were trying to do is have your users send campaigns that have high open rates. And you could do things like show them like the open rate range for companies they're in their industry, and tell them what percentile they're in. So that one is already like making you feel a little competitive, right? It's just by just making you compare, if you're a competitive person, you want to be in the top. And you could maybe even like unlock achievements when you get to higher percentiles. You could also do like a streak in terms of if you can do 5 campaigns in a row that have really high open rates, then you get a streak, and there's another reward for that, right? So that could be an example there. Or let's say you want to.
We have a couple good ones from the community. Let's say it's a billing app or a banking app. How do you apply gamification?
Okay.
Sorry, I picked out the tough one for you.
It's all good. It's all good. So billing app. This is like a bill.com. It's like I use bill.com for my advising. Let's see. I feel like they're always trying to upsell me to like a higher tier. So maybe something that, like a link. Actually, LinkedIn does as well, like completing your profile, like a progress bar. That's like gamification.
Progress bar. Mm-hmm.
So you do something like that. You could. Let's see. It depends on the behavior you want to drive, right? So, if
maybe I have a one based on what you said. Maybe like it's like paying bills on time.
Okay.
Like the net 30 days, right? Like a lot of companies wait until 30 days to pay. But if you get paid earlier, maybe you score some reward that unlock some additional benefit. I think that would be.
That's really interesting for sure. Yeah. So in the accounts receivable side, if I'm sending bills, I want to get my kind of paid as soon as possible. Maybe you can ask me when I'm onboarding. Bill.com could ask me how quickly do you usually get paid. I could say within 29 days in average, and then they give me things I can do to beat that, right, and make sure I get paid sooner and sooner each month. So that could be one way.
This is an interesting. Actually, by the way, our community is super creative. There's about how do you use gamification to engage farmers in agriculture, and I also really like this one: student management for school. So it's putting gamification for good.
Yes.
Any thoughts there?
Yeah. So I think there's a key insight here, which is the gamification could be applied to any industry. You got to think about what behavior exactly you want to drive in a student management system or in an agriculture outreach program or whatever, right? So getting very specific about that behavior is like the first step, which is actually kind of hard to know exactly what behavior you want to drive. And then once you have that behavior, let's say student management system, the ones here on the screen, I am the person responsible for making sure people don't drop out of school, right? So first thing is measuring that, showing what the rate is. Then ideally there's some sort of thing that tracks like people who are high chance of dropping off, of becoming dropouts. And then ideally there's also like a response time. How quickly do I take action when the system gives me an alarm, right? So again, here you could say, compare. You have 5 people who have this job, reach out to at-risk students, and we keep track of how fast they are at doing that and how effective they are at dropping that off. And you make that data available to see, for everyone to see. So there's some sort of comparison and so forth. It could be anonymous, whatever. And then there is rewards for moving people from like at risk to not at risk. Like, can you get them to sign up for a class, or withdraw from a really hard class to like a better class, etc. Right? So again, you have to be super specific on the behavior you want to drive.
Yeah. I love that call out. It's like, it's not about the techniques of applying gamification for gamification's sake, but it's actually coming out from defining the outcome, the behavior, like as you said, that you wanted to change, and use that as the starting point. I do want to touch upon a couple of themes that I started merging. Time flies, so we do have to maybe pass some of those questions pretty quickly. So the first one, a couple of folks asked about the notion of like, what is the right amount of reward to keep it fun? Americo asked the right amount of stimulus. John asked about, hey, when do you use reward? Like, what is the pros and cons that you're thinking about? Like, how do you know it's the right one to hook people to continue to stay engaged?
Yeah. The different things will hook different people, and that's the kind of this insight on profiles, right? Like, I really push for Duolingo to have a leaderboard, but I'm not competitive, so I never got personally hooked on it. I just knew some people would, and it worked, for them. For me, it was other gamification mechanics that worked better. So that's understanding one thing, that you're gonna have to probably try a few angles to get 100% of users. In terms of rewards, there are different flavors of rewards. There's rewards that are like somewhat tangible, or like extrinsic, and things that are more intrinsic. So ideally, you can tap into more of the intrinsic things. Tapping into intrinsic rewards is much harder to do, requires a lot more thoughtfulness, but they're a lot more scalable, and they're also oftentimes free. Versus extrinsic rewards are more harder to scale. So one example I like to give is, what happens when you win the Diamond League in Duolingo? It's like nothing. Like it's literally like, hey, you won. That's it. Or when you hit a 100-day streak on Duolingo, or 1,000-day streak on Duolingo, like nothing really quite different happens. And people keep doing it. But why? Because that to them means something to them, right? Like, it means that as someone who has a streak, I'm the kind of person who can have a streak. I'm a committed learner. I have mastery over myself, right? That means something to me. So when I keep doing that, or I can brag about it to other people, and that gives me a sense of pride, or whatever it is. So that is an intrinsic reward. And those are the most powerful ones, and also the super scalable. So that's one thing I would recommend people do. Think about how you can tap into that, and then you can definitely overdo gamification. And the way I thought about it for most products that are trying to build a habit is that people are not coming here to play a game. Unless you're building a game, people are not coming to play a game. They're coming to learn a language, or get more fit, or run more, or whatever it is. So if the gamification gets in the way of the main job to be done, then you overdone it. The idea is that you can do the job to be done without having to even care about the gamification, and then the gamification gets layered on top as a way to keep you more hooked, more motivated, etc.
I know that there are a couple questions. You probably touch upon it, but just any additional things. So there's people understanding, there's fun part of gamification, right? The highlights, but what would be some of the downside of gamification if you overdo it? Like, how do you find that right balance? Just you mentioned a little bit already, don't get into the weight of doing it, but anything additional for people to think about?
Yeah, you can definitely overdo it or do it wrong and have it backfire. So, one example of this that we always had to course correct constantly at Duolingo was XP. So if you do things and Duolingo, you get experience points, and sometimes we would find that we were giving experience points for things that were not super aligned with learning value, and then people would start doing a bunch of stuff that were like not that useful for their learning. Or like, oh my gosh, that's not why you're even here. Like, so we needed to realign the gamification rewards with the learning value. So we would say, well, if you do harder content, we're going to give you more XP. Or if you are doing something that you shouldn't be doing, we're going to nerf the XP. So it's not incentivizing you to do that anymore. So oftentimes when you get the wrong outcome, it doesn't mean gamification is a bad fit. It probably means you're doing it not quite right.
I think to your point earlier that you mentioned about how, leaderboard sometimes does not drive you, but other stuff like streak really drives me, that I don't want to break it. And similarly, I think our LinkedIn member said, hey, as a, avid gamer, basically similar to what you said, different people think of it differently, right? Like in a racing car game, you can unlock new cars, different equipment, your car might look better, cooler. So it really depends. Like it's ego boosting, less so like intrinsic motivation, to your point, less of an extrinsic one, even though you can show off if you have a better and cooler looking car. So I guess like you mentioned earlier, maybe there's no one size fits all, and there's need to be different techniques and different levers to pull to motivate different users.
Yeah.
I do wanted to ask questions. One more question around the future of gamification, especially with all the Gen AI. We already seeing how users can use Midjourney or other tools to create a lot of visuals. What do you think is the future of gamification, more broadly and maybe more specifically for product management?
Yeah, I think I think there's definitely a future for it. I'm not sure that generative AI. Okay, I don't think generative AI will impact this very much. I think it's that the human brain is basically what it is, and it's been for a long time. And what gamification does is that it gives the brain chemical rewards, right? So that you keep doing certain things. And I think we'll continue to find ways to do that. I think as a society, we have a problem that too many products do that, right? And often do it to incentivize behaviors that are not good for you. And I hope that we find more and more applications to do this in kind of good for you outcomes, good for you tasks.
Do you think there'll be like more variations of techniques or frameworks to use for gamification, or the core is going to stay the same because it's very much like human nature, like you said?
Yeah, I think the core science behind it will stay the same, but I think we will find new and creative techniques to do it. Like that's happening all the time in terms of what games do themselves. And as games continue to evolve, we can find more and more things we can then translate or kind of adopt and adapt to other aspects of human experience.
Awesome. So I know that today's talk is primarily about, gamification, but you did grow Duolingo, to over 60 million MAU and 415 million in ARR and an IPO. Besides gamification, we have this other question also from our community. What are the other key levers, strategies, and techniques that you use to grow? I'm sure it's not just gamification. So
No, of course. Yeah, there's a lot more. I remember when I joined Duolingo, there was this debate of whether, I don't think Luis ever took it seriously, but there was a debate of like, are we a gaming company or are we a learning company? I was very much on the side that we were a learning company. And part of the reason is the brand. So the brand is like super powerful, and it's very much associated with learning in a fun way, but learning first and foremost. So I think brand is a key strategy of it, and the brand is very authentic because it comes through the product, and there's characters, and it's beautiful and so forth. There's a lot of things that help with that. So I think the gamification with the branding helps drive word of mouth very effectively. And then that has also then fueled the ability to create like really compelling like social media videos on TikTok and other things like that, or partnering with influencers in different places. So that's one angle that really helped. We also were very thoughtful and methodical about international expansion. And, the company was able to create a really good playbook for that. Starting with, during my time there, that playbook evolved a lot, starting with China. And then that Kai led that and then kind of expanded to other parts of the world too.
Yeah, I heard a lot about the international one, given my friend Oscar work sort of in that market. So definitely heard good things about it. China is a hard market to crack, and I'm really glad to see Duolingo making a dance there. All right, I think we're coming up on time. Okay, I know that time just really flies, and people seem to enjoy our talk. But one last challenge that I usually impose to all of my guests is a lightning round of questions. Are you ready for the challenge?
Let's do it.
All right, Jore. So first, what is your favorite product currently and why?
I'm really into Tonal. It's a
fitness.
Fitness workout equipment. And it's made me have a workout habit that's been the best I've had since high school.
Nice. You're not the first guest who mentioned that. Actually, there's quite a few fans. Okay. I think they're a big competitor, obviously, to Peloton for home fitness. Yeah. Second question, who would you say is your sort of most influential product role model who has influenced your way of thinking or your career?
There's a handful. I think obviously Luis, the CEO of Duolingo, I learned a ton from him, working very closely with him. Ken Norton as well. He was my coach for some time, and he's just like a super wise individual. Highly recommend him too. And yeah, I would say probably those two.
Nice. One last question. Actually, our members also asked, like, since you study a lot of user psychology, gamification, any sort of recommended resources to learn more about it? There's so many questions. We can definitely do a part 2 if you're up for it, to answer even more question and do more simulation. But any sort of resources, books, courses that you encourage people to take to learn more about it?
I haven't really kept up a lot on the gamification thing, but like learning from other sources, I think what was really helpful for me is to dive into games, just plainly games, and then think about the translation of that. There's a ton of materials on how to build really good games. There isn't a lot of how to translate it to other parts of society. So I would just go directly to the source, and then you have to innovate your way into whatever product you're building. So the structure of fun was one that I don't know if it's still around, but it was one that we use a lot. It's pretty popular back in the day.
I think it's a helpful habit to have like someone that we feature earlier talking about what makes a game fun and the reflection of that, and then how you then can apply that to your product and testing different ways.
Yeah.
All right. I know that we're coming up on time, but it looks like we're getting a lot of love from the community, all on fires and in a good way, in a fresh and informative session. There's a lot of fans for Ken Norton as well. So glad that he's your mentor. There's folks who recommended some courses from Harbor on gamification and student engagement.
That is the course I took, Chris Diddy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Great. Looks like we have a pretty informative community as well that can offer supports of resources. But thank you so much, Jorge. I know time is flying by. And for folks who wanted to get a quick recap of key takeaways from today's session, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. You can navigate to the event details tab and see a link there. And yeah, thank you very much again for joining us today. And I'll see most of you in the coming Fridays.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Have a good weekend. Bye.